The Forbidden Zone Admiral Krikstal stood before the massive viewing screen of the Zephyrian command station. His forearms crossed behind his back as he watched the stars drift slowly past. The Helix Nebula painted the darkness with swirls of wool, purple and gold, a beautiful sight that had once been home to one of the galaxy's most remarkable species. Now it served as a monument to their extinction. 30 years had passed since the last human transmission had gone silent. 30 years since the plague had swept through their colonies, wiping out entire worlds in a matter of weeks. The Zephyrian Empire had expanded to fill the void left behind, claiming system after system that had once belonged to the ingenious and stubborn creatures called humans. Krikstal had been young then, barely old enough to serve in the Empire's outer patrol fleets. He remembered the final desperate messages from human worlds, the pleading voices calling for help as their people fell to the mysterious illness that seemed to target only their species. The Empire had tried to help, or so the official records claimed. Medical ships had been dispatched, research stations established, but it had been too late. The humans had simply vanished, leaving behind empty cities and silent worlds. Chime of an incoming priority alert pulled Krikstal from his memories. Lieutenant Warship, his second in command, approached with the practiced efficiency that had made her invaluable during their 20-year partnership. "Admiral, we have an anomaly in Sector 7, she reported, her voice carrying the slight musical quality common to her people. Long-range sensors have detected an unidentified vessel approaching the Terminus Gate." Krikstal's interest sharpened. The Terminus Gate was the most heavily guarded checkpoint in the Empire, a massive space station that controlled access to the core worlds. Nothing approached it without proper identification and clearance. The very idea that something unknown could be detected in that sector sent a chill through his scaled hide. "Show me," he commanded. The main screen shifted to display the tactical readout from Sector 7. At first, Krikstal saw nothing unusual, just the familiar patterns of patrol. Ships and merchant vessels moving along their designated routes. Then Vashai enhanced the display, and his breath caught in his throat. There, at the edge of sensor range, was a ship unlike anything in the Imperial fleet. It was massive, easily twice the size of their largest dreadnoughts, with a hull that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Strange geometries covered its surface, angles that hurt to look at directly, as if the ship existed in more dimensions than the eye could process. "By the eternal void," Krikstal whispered. "What is that thing?" "Unknown, sir," Moshai replied, her musical voice now tight with concern. "The design doesn't match any known species in our databases. The energy signature is completely foreign." Krikstal studied the readings more carefully. The ship's power output was staggering, far beyond anything the Empire had achieved. Yet it moved with a grace that suggested complete mastery of its technology. There was something else, something that nagged at the back of his mind. "The hull configuration," he said slowly. "Run a comparative analysis against archived human vessel designs." Vashai's eyes widened. "Sir, surely you don't think. Just do it." The computer worked for several minutes, cross-referencing thousands of recorded human ship designs from the archives. When the results appeared, the bridge fell silent. The match wasn't perfect, but it was unmistakable. The basic structural elements, the way the ship's sections connected, the placement of what appeared to be weapon ports, all of it echoed human engineering principles, but evolved far beyond anything they had created before their extinction. "It's impossible," Vashai breathed. "The humans are gone. We have confirmed records of the plague's spread, the collapse of their colonies. There are no survivors." Krikstal wasn't so sure. He had always found the human extinction suspiciously convenient for the Empire's expansion plans. The plague had been remarkably specific, targeting only human physiology while leaving other species completely unaffected. At the time, it had, been attributed to the humans' unique evolutionary path, their adaptation to their homeworld's specific conditions, making them vulnerable to the pathogen. "Open a channel to the vessel," he ordered. "All frequencies." The communications officer worked quickly, broadcasting on every known frequency used by spacefaring civilizations. The response was immediate and unsettling complete silence. The ship neither acknowledged their hails nor altered its course. It simply continued its steady approach toward the terminus gate, as if the Empire's most powerful defensive position was of no concern whatsoever. "Sir," the sensor operator called out, "the vessel is scanning us. I'm detecting multiple energy beams sweeping our position." "Scanning us?" Krickstahl's voice rose slightly. "Are they targeting our weapons?" "No, sir." "It's more comprehensive then." "That. They're scanning our hull composition, our power systems, our crew quarters. It's as if they're taking a complete inventory of our capabilities." The implications were staggering. Whatever was aboard that ship possessed technology so advanced that it could penetrate the Empire's most sophisticated shielding as if it didn't exist. Krickstahl felt a cold fear settle in his stomach. If this was indeed a human vessel, if somehow they had survived and advanced their technology to such levels, what did that mean for the Empire? "Admiral," Vashai said quietly, "should we alert?" "The High Command?" Krickstahl hesitated. The Empire's response to potential threats was predictable and brutal. They would send the full might of the Imperial fleet to destroy the vessel, regardless of the consequences. But something about the ship's behavior suggested it wasn't hostile. It hadn't fired on any Imperial vessels, hadn't made any aggressive moves. It simply existed, a dark reminder of a past the Empire had tried to bury. Not yet, he decided. Continue monitoring. "I want to know everything about that ship." Hours passed as the mysterious vessel continued its approach. Imperial patrol. Ships gave it a wide berth, their commanders clearly as unsettled by its presence as Krickstahl was. The ship's scans continued, methodical and thorough, but still no communication was attempted. Asterisk then, as the vessel reached the outer perimeter of the terminus gate's defense grid, something changed. The ship slowed, coming to a complete stop relative to the gate. For a moment, Krickstahl thought it might finally attempt communication. Instead, something far more disturbing happened. The ship began to sing that. It wasn't a sound transmitted through space. That was impossible. Instead, it was a resonance that seemed to vibrate through the very fabric of reality itself. Every sensor on every ship in the sector detected it, a low, haunting melody that spoke of loss and hope and unbreakable determination. Krickstahl recognized it immediately. It was a human song, one he had heard in archived recordings from their homeworld. A song of mourning and remembrance, traditionally sung at funerals and memorials. But this version was different, evolved, as if the melody had been refined and perfected over decades of remembrance. "Admiral," the communications officer said, his voice shaking slightly, "we are receiving a transmission. Put it through." The main screen flickered, and suddenly they were looking at a human face. Krickstahl's heart stopped. The figure was unmistakably human, the bilateral symmetry, the forward-facing eyes, the soft features that had once been so common in the galaxy. But there were differences, too. The eyes held depths that seemed to contain centuries of wisdom and pain. The skin had a subtle luminescence, as if lit from within by some inner fire. "I am Captain Sarah Chun of the Earth Colonial Fleet vessel." "Terra's Vengeance," the human said, her voice carrying the weight of authority and grief. 30 years ago, your empire told the galaxy that humanity had perished. That was a lie." Krickstahl felt his blood turn to ice. The implications of those words were staggering. If humans had survived, if they had spent 30 years developing technology that could produce ships like the one before them, what did that mean for the Empire's future? "We have watched," Captain Chun continued, as your empire expanded into our former territories. We have seen how you have claimed our worlds, our resources, our very legacy as your own. We have remained silent, hoping that time would heal the wounds of the past." The human's eyes hardened, and Krikstal saw something in them that made his scales crawl with fear. It was the look of a predator that had been patient for far too long. "But patience has its limits," Chun said. "We have evidence of what truly happened to our people. We have proof of the Empire's crimes. And we have decided that the time for silence is over." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Krikstal stared at the screen, his mind racing through the implications. If the humans had survived, if they possessed evidence of Empire wrongdoing, it could destabilize the entire galactic order. "Sir," Ashai whispered, "what are your orders?" Before Krikstal could respond, the sensors lit up with new contacts. Ships were decloaking throughout the sector, dozens of them, all with the same dark, impossible design as Terra's vengeance. The humans hadn't sent just one ship. They had sent a fleet, and they were moving toward the heart of the Empire. Krikstal closed his eyes and made a decision that would change the course of galactic history. Instead of alerting the High Command, he opened a private channel to the human ship. "Captain Chun," he said, his voice steady despite the fear coursing through him, "I believe we need to talk." The response came immediately, and for the first time in 30 years, a human voice spoke directly to an Imperial officer. "Yes, Admiral Krikstal," Chun replied, somehow knowing his name despite having never met him. "I believe we do." The age of human extinction was over. The age of reckoning had begun. Asterisk the reckoning, the shuttle bay aboard Terra's vengeance was unlike anything Admiral Krikstal had ever seen. The walls seemed to pulse with a soft, organic light that reminded him of a living heartbeat. The technology was so advanced it appeared almost magical, surfaces that bent light in impossible ways, and machinery that hummed with barely contained power. "Captain," Sarah Chun stood waiting for him, flanked by 2 other humans who wore the same luminescent quality in their skin. Up close, Krikstal could see that the changes went deeper than he had first realized. These weren't quite the same humans the galaxy had known 30 years ago. They had evolved, adapted, become something more. "Admiral," Chun said, extending her hand in the traditional human greeting. "Thank you for coming alone, as requested." Krikstal studied her face carefully. There was pain there, ancient and deep, but also a strength that seemed unbreakable. "I had to know the truth," he replied, taking her hand. The contact sent a strange warmth through his scaled palm. "The truth," Chun repeated, a bitter smile crossing her features. "The truth is something your empire has tried very hard to bury. Come, let me show you." She led him through corridors that seemed to reshape themselves as they walked, the walls displaying star charts and historical records that shifted and flowed like living documents. They passed other humans, each one carrying that same inner light, their eyes holding depths that spoke of shared suffering and unbreakable resolve. "You're different," Krikstal observed, "from the humans we remember. 30 years of fighting for survival will change a species," Chun replied, "especially when that survival depends on evolving beyond what you once were." They entered a vast chamber at the heart of the ship, its walls transparent and offering a view of the stars beyond. In the center stood a holographic display showing the galaxy as it existed today, with Empire territories marked in red and small, hidden enclaves marked in blue. "This is what remains of humanity," Chun said, gesturing to the blue markers. 57 hidden colonies scattered across the galaxy's most remote regions. 4.5 billion souls who refused to die quietly. Krikstal stared at the display in shock. The Empire had been so certain of humanity's extinction, so confident in their expansion into former human territories. To learn that billions had survived, had been watching from the shadows, was terrifying beyond measure. "How?" he asked. Chun's expression darkened. "Because we learned the truth about the plague. It wasn't natural, Admiral. It was engineered." The holographic display shifted, showing molecular structures and genetic sequences that meant nothing to Krixtal, but clearly represented something horrific to Chun. "The plague was specifically designed to target human DNA," she continued. "It was a weapon, deployed by agents of your empire to clear the way for expansion. We have the research data, the communication logs, the orders from the High Command. Your people didn't just fail to save us. They actively worked to exterminate us." Krixtal felt his legs weaken. "That's impossible. The Empire would never—" "Wouldn't they?" Chun interrupted. "Think about it, Admiral. How convenient was it that the plague struck just as the Empire was looking to expand? How convenient that it affected only humans, leaving our worlds empty and ready for colonization? How convenient that every attempt to develop a cure failed, despite the Empire's supposed medical expertise." The display showed footage from the plague years, human families dying in their homes, while Imperial medical teams stood by, supposedly helpless. But now, with the context Chun had provided, their inaction looked like something far more sinister. "Some of us suspected," Chun continued. "The ones who escaped to the frontier colonies, who took samples of the plague with them. We spent years studying it, learning how it worked, developing countermeasures. It took us 5 years to create an immunity, 5 years of watching our people die while we worked. And then we began to rebuild. But we couldn't do it as we had before. The Empire had shown us what they were capable of. We had to become something they couldn't destroy." Chun gestured, and the chamber filled with new holographic displays. Krixtal saw human colonies unlike anything in the historical records. Cities that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, farms that grew in the quantum foam between, stars, ships that could phase in and out of reality itself. "We adapted," Chun said simply. "We evolved. We became more than human while remaining true to what made us human in the first place." "What do you want?" Krixtal asked, though he suspected. He already knew the answer. "Justice," Chun replied, "and the truth. The galaxy believes we're extinct, that the Empire expanded naturally into uninhabited space. They need to know what really happened." Before Krixtal could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the ship. A new holographic display materialized, showing Imperial fleets converging on their position from all directions. Hundreds of ships, the full might of the Empire's military, approaching with weapons charged and ready to fire. "They found us," Chun said calmly. "Your High Command finally realized what was happening." "I didn't tell them," Krixtal said quickly. "I swear, I followed your instructions exactly." "I know," Chun replied, "but your absence from your post was noted, and our presence here couldn't remain hidden forever." Krixtal watched the approaching fleets with growing dread. Even with their advanced technology, the humans were vastly outnumbered. "You need to run," he said. "Jump to hyperspace, escape, while you still can." Chun smiled, and for the first time, it was genuinely warm. "Admiral, you still don't understand what we've become." The display shifted to show the approaching Imperial fleet in detail. At their head was the Eternal Dominion, the Empire's most powerful dreadnought, carrying enough firepower to level entire planets. Behind it came wave after wave of cruisers, destroyers, and fighter squadrons. "All ships," came the broadcast from the Imperial fleet. "This is Admiral Vixter of the Eternal Dominion. Surrender immediately or be destroyed. You are in violation of Imperial space and will be dealt with accordingly." Chun walked to the center of the chamber and spoke into the air. Her voice was transmitted not just to the Imperial fleet, but across the entire galaxy, on every frequency, to every inhabited world. "People of the galaxy," she said, "my name is Captain Sarah Chun of the Earth Colonial Fleet. 30 years ago, your leaders told you that humanity had been destroyed by plague. Today, I tell you the truth." A holographic displays began showing the evidence Chun had gathered. Research logs detailing the creation of the plague, communication records showing Imperial agents deploying it on human worlds, footage of Imperial medical teams standing by while humans died. "We were not victims of natural disaster," Chun continued. "We were victims of genocide, systematic extermination carried out to clear the way for Imperial expansion. But we survived, we adapted, and now we return, not for revenge, but for justice." The Imperial fleet had reached firing range, but Admiral Vexter seemed to hesitate as the evidence continued to broadcast across the galaxy. Krikstal could imagine the chaos erupting on Imperial worlds as citizens saw the truth for the first time. "Open fire," Vexter finally commanded. "Destroy that ship." The Eternal Dominion's main guns fired, a concentrated beam of energy that could vaporize a small moon. It struck Terra's vengeance directly, and for a moment, Krikstal was certain he was about to die. Asterisk. Instead, the energy simply disappeared, absorbed into the ship's hull like water into sand. The human vessel didn't even shudder. "Our turn," Chun said quietly. What happened next would be remembered as the day the galaxy changed forever. Terra's vengeance didn't return fire with weapons. Instead, it began to sing again, that same haunting melody they had broadcast before. But this time, the song carried power. The music resonated through space itself, a frequency that touched the very fabric of reality. One by one, the Imperial ships began to shut down, their weapon systems failing, their engines going dark. Not destroyed, not damaged, simply stopped. "What are you doing to them?" Krikstal whispered. "Showing them what we've learned," Chun replied. "We discovered that the universe itself has a frequency, a song that binds all matter and energy together. We learned to harmonize with it, to become part of the music rather than fighting against it." More human ships were appearing throughout the galaxy now, broadcasting the same evidence, the same song. On Imperial worlds, citizens were taking to the streets, demanding answers from their leaders. The careful lies that had held the Empire together were crumbling. "This is Admiral Vexter," came a new transmission, the Imperial commander's voice. Shaking. "What do you want?" Chun's response was heard across the galaxy. "We want the truth to be told. We want reparations for the worlds that were stolen. And we want to work together to build something better than what came before. And if we refuse?" Chun looked at Krikstal, and he saw something in her eyes that made him understand why humans had been so feared, so respected, before their supposed extinction. It wasn't cruelty or anger. It was absolute determination. "Then we will make sure. The galaxy knows exactly what kind of leaders they have," she said. "The choice is yours, Admiral." In the end, the Empire chose surrender over exposure. Within hours, the High Command was issuing statements acknowledging past mistakes and agreeing to negotiations. Within days, the first reparation ships were heading to human colonies, carrying supplies and technology to help rebuild what had been lost. But perhaps most importantly, the galaxy had learned something new about humanity. They were not a species that could be exterminated. They were not a people who would simply fade away. They were survivors, adapters, creatures who could evolve beyond their limits, while never losing their essential compassion. As Krikstal prepared to leave Terra's vengeance, Chun walked him to the shuttle bay. "What happens now?" he asked. "Now we begin again," she replied. Humans and the Empire, working together instead of against each other. Your people need our medical knowledge to cure diseases that have plagued your worlds for centuries. We need your help to rebuild what was lost. And you'll forgive us? After everything? Chun smiled, that warm expression that reminded Krikstal why humans had once been considered among the galaxy's most remarkable peoples. Admiral, the ability to forgive is what makes us human. The strength to rebuild is what makes us survivors. The wisdom to work together is what will make us all better. As his shuttle departed, Krikstal looked back at the human fleet. They were no longer the same species that had once explored the galaxy with wonder and hope. They were something new, something evolved, something that had learned to harmonize with the universe itself. But in the end, they were still human, and that, Krikstal realized, was the most remarkable thing of all. Asterisk.